All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm really excited for us to be here tonight, all of us from the Girragarum First Nations Homeschool Co-op. Is just so excited that this is finally coming to fruition. We've been planning about this and thinking about this for a while now. And so to have you all here, we really appreciate your time. And we also appreciate your investment as well, because we know it takes time and it's an investment. And, 7 o'clock also is a pretty tricky time for those of us that have children or families or commitments. And so thank you for being in this space with us. But yes, so welcome to our 4-week First Nations Homeschool workshop series that will be kicking off for the next couple of weeks on a Tuesday. So without further ado, I would just like to, on behalf of the First Nations Homeschool workshop facilitators, like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Zenath Kes peoples as Australia's first peoples who have never ceded their sovereignty. And we would like to acknowledge the Gimoi Wallabara, Yidinji and Yurkanji people who have never, and we'd like to pay our respects to them as the traditional custodians of the lands in which our workshops are facilitated from. And we pay our deepest respects to the elders past and present and acknowledge their contributions, sacrifices, resilience, and hope that continues to strengthen our people for generations to come. And we acknowledge and we know that this land always was and always will be Aboriginal and Zenath Kes land. And I also want to extend that acknowledgement to wherever you all are linking in from tonight. We know that we have people linking in from Yugambeh land. We've got presenters that have sent in pre-recordings from Worimi land. We've got a Deadly brother that's linking in from New Caledonia. We've got people linking in from Mamu country, Gubbi Gubbi country, which a lot of us are from. Actually, pretty much all of the people from the co-op are from Gubbi Gubbi country. And then we'll have people linking in from Nam and all of these other Mianjin. And so if that's, I would love it if you could just send a little message telling us where you're linking in from. And if I didn't acknowledge where you're linking in from, I apologize. And we want to acknowledge and extend that acknowledgement to where you're linking in from as well. So last week, before we started, what we did was we just paused for a minute. And in doing so, this really just brought us back into this space and into the room that we're in and this time that we're in. And we know that we all have full lives and commitments and things that we are doing. And so sometimes coming into a workshop at 7 o'clock at night is the last thing that you want to do. But we just want to honor you all for doing that. And so we want to just take this time just for a minute, just to pause and just breathe and just think about why we're here. And I guess open our hearts up and our minds up and our spirits up just to be expectant for what tonight is going to bring for all of us. So I'm going to turn my screen off and then I'll turn it back on after the minute is finished. Thank you, everybody. I feel like it's so important that we do that, because life gets really hectic sometimes. So it's good just to pause and remember why we're here and what we're doing as well. And I think it's also important to remember that, before we get into the yarns tonight, that everyone that's yarning tonight and us as a co-op and facilitators, we're human beings, and so we don't have all the answers. And so, you know, the things that we share with you all are just it's just really lived experience and things that we've learned along the journey. And some of us are further along the journey than others. But we hope that tonight it can bring some encouragement to you all. It can bring some clarity if that's what you're needing. But also just, I hope it can also share with you the way that we do what we do in terms of homeschooling and I guess embedding that First Nations perspective into what we're doing. So welcome everyone to workshop 1. So tonight's session, we're just going to set some housekeeping. So if you do have any questions, we just ask that you leave it to the end of the session, because we will have a Q&A time. And I think that it's important that, you know, when we are covering the topics that you can see that are on the screen, what does decolonising education look like, how to build your homeschool foundations, how your values, beliefs, and family learning pillars assist you with creating your annual plans. They're the different things that we're going to be covering tonight. And some of you might be like, what the actual heck are you talking about? But it'll start to make sense as we get further along into the sessions. But they are the topics for tonight's session. And I think it's important to remember that every single thing that we are doing in here is, and creating this new system to, I guess, look at homeschooling and learning at home, it is decolonising. And so we are, I guess, essentially focusing on helping us to connect with our children and helping us to connect with our families. And so by choosing to homeschool, or by choosing to, you know, take your child on that learning journey at home, you are already decolonising. And one thing that Annie Layla has been talking to me a lot about is we are reclaiming that educational sovereignty. And so taking our children out of a white stream system is actually that reclaiming of that educational sovereignty, and it is decolonising our education straight up just by doing that and by being here today, and I guess opening ourselves up for this yarn. So basically, sorry if you can see me looking over to the right hand side, it's because I'm looking at my notes, and so sometimes my mouth talks a little bit faster than my brain is processing, so I just got to make sure I'm covering it as well. So decolonising education and our ways of learning as Bama people, First Nations people, Pacifica people, Indigenous people, to where we are from, it's a very big subject. And we have also spoken about in the introductory session last week that we're actually going to look at actually opening up a massive, not a massive, but we're going to be looking at creating a decolonising workshop and decolonising workshop series for, I guess, a deeper dive into this. But obviously today we're here to also talk about homeschooling and how to register and how to do all of the things like that. So we're going to cover it briefly, and I guess, yeah, just share from our experiences. But I think that it's important to remember that it's something that we as homeschoolers, I guess, are trying to do every single day, is decolonising our learning. And yeah, it's an ongoing journey, and so it never stops. I'm going to hand it over to Annie Layla now, and she's going to just yarn with you about, I guess, what this title says, decolonising education, and what it means for her. So I'm going to hand it over to her. So take it away.
Right, unmute. Can you hear me? All right. So, well, Talisha covered it all. No. Yeah. So I haven't met everybody. So I did sort of just give my background in the introduction, and I guess you can sort of see it from the bio too. So, you know, I have 4 kids that I'm homeschooling, a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old, I had to think then. And so the 8 and 10-year-old have never been to school. The older kids have, like, I pulled them out of school, and then at some point they wanted to go back, and then they wanted to come home. You know, they got whatever they needed and then came home. And yeah, so you know, when I think about my sort of process of sort of decolonising education for me, and that system was sort of like, I guess, you know, I did talk in the intro to how I had done a master's in science. And so during my science degree, I did a thesis in my husband's community, and science at the time, so this was probably, how many years ago was this? 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. So maybe even 12, 13 years ago. And during that process, I was asked to do some things by the university that didn't sit right with me. And so I had to really, really unpack a lot. Like, and I know all of us blackfellas, we've been through that, where you're put in a situation where you're not sure there's something is being violated, but you're not really sure what. And so I think in that process, I really had to unpack what it meant to be Black and what were my cultural values. So because I was also quite shy, I still sort of am shy, I feel like. Yeah. I thought that maybe it was just because I was shy that I didn't want to go into random people's houses and ask if I could swab their dogs and stuff. So, you know, I'm filling you in on it all now. But I'm going to get to a point, all right? So I thought it was all that, and so there was a point there where I thought, oh no, you're just being shamed, like, you know, this is a good opportunity, just do what they want you to do, you know. And then I had to really keep unpacking it and going, no, this is actually like really wrong culturally. And then it, you know, I got in touch with this big amazing group of Indigenous researchers. We all had this big group together where we were in the sciences, asked to do a lot of stuff by our supervisors, by white supervisors in our own communities, that we were like, okay, that's not right with us. And so having this big collective of where we were able to unpack our cultural values and really go, no, that's wrong, you can't do that. And had a big group of us then being able to go, no, we're not doing that. This is a better way of doing it. So anyway, I had 2 kids then that were both in school. And so we really sort of unpacked the sciences. That's when I learnt about, I don't know if anyone reads or is into theoretical stuff. So there was a decolonising methodologies, huge paper written by Linda Tuaway Smith, who's a Māori lady. And so we started really decolonising the sciences. And so then, you know, I feel like once you decolonize one part, it just starts to flow on. It's like a freaking domino effect, because then you start going, wait a minute, that doesn't work. Why is that there? And what's that there for? So anyway, I was raised pretty career oriented. My grandmother was really like, okay, what are you going to be? What are you going to do? What are you going to do with your life? You know, and my dad being one of the first doctors, Aboriginal doctors in Australia, we sort of had that pressure to do something as a career. And so for me, parenting was like, if I'm going to be super honest, it was sort of like I get married, tick a box, I have kids, tick a box, you know. And so, and then I just continue on with my career, and we'll have massive house and white picket fence, you know. So anyway, you know, I sort of went down that road, and then my son started struggling in the system, and I had to, there was a lot of things. I explained that in the intro. Don't feel like crying again tonight, so I'm not going to go there. But there was a moment, my husband's in language revitalizer, so in his community in Yarrabah, so a Kungenji man, cultural man, dancer. So we do a lot of cultural stuff in our community. And at the time we were delivering NAIDOC events at the kids' school. And one of the teacher aides, who was also a mum of one of the other kids, she pulled me aside and she said to me, you know, I said to my son, gee, he must have the most wonderful life, because they were watching my son throw spears and teach kids how to throw spears with the woomera. And I remember thinking, well, no, we don't, because literally we're only doing this here right now for your fluff, like good ways, you know. And then going, well, we actually could have a great life. We could be doing all this stuff. We could be keeping all of this alive. And why aren't we, you know, and why aren't I doing that? And so then I had to really sort of step back and go, okay, like, what is my role as a parent, and put my kids first in everything, and let go of my ideals. I'm not saying that you can't have a career in homeschool, because you definitely can. But at the time, I also had a little baby. So, you know, I was like, you know, just for me, it became really decolonizing parenting, because then as my husband and I, we went, okay, what would we be doing traditionally, cultural way, Kungenji way, what would we be doing? and we're able to go through this whole big chain of development for our people, and then just sort of really go, well, you know what, this is actually just parenting, that it, having the responsibility to raise your child, even their education, is such an honor. And but it's also our job, and so, I guess in saying that, I really liked that quote around, you can't keep using tools of oppression and expect to raise free people, because me continuing to send them into an environment that is not determined by us was wrong. But so my act of decolonizing and self-determining was, at the end of the day, just really parenting. So I just felt like that it was our role to do those things as parents, and there wasn't enough time to teach them all the cultural knowledge that we had, because they'd get home from school and you'd get 2 hours and they'd be in bed, and then I was like, man, we're not even teaching them this stuff, So, and I felt like our cultural knowledge has actually for me, it has a higher weighting than than other knowledges. But then I go, but yeah. So anyway, there were some clashes that I felt, so, in the system, and the specific clashes that I felt that I knew that I needed decolonizing from was, I was talking to Auntie Kerry Hollingsworth about this recently. She runs some cultural competency stuff. She's an amazing educator up here in Cairns. And so she was explaining that, that it's not necessarily, like, I know we say white and black, and it just so happens that the dominant culture and the colonizing culture here was a white culture. But she was saying, that it's really about individualists and collectivists. And that really sort of resonated with me, because I feel like that was one of my big issues, was that my experiences in the schooling system were very individualist, and it was all about, oh, you push individual success and you compete with each other and you play kids against each other to get them to compete so that one can win and one can, whereas, as blackfellas, anything that we do, we're always like, like I've been to so many sort of educational I guess trainings and other stuff, and when there's a big mob of Murrays there and we all go around and we say, what makes you deadly, or why are you here, and we all say our community and our family, so for me, everything that we do is collectivist. And so I really just wanted to unpack all of that and make sure that my kids were growing up with that knowledge of this collectivism and of being in a big family. So the reason why I shared all that with you in a very roundabout way is so that you can sort of understand that this process really makes you look in at yourself a lot, and things come out that you didn't know mattered, that don't matter and shouldn't matter, but they do matter to you for some reason. And it is a huge process of decolonizing, of having sovereignty over yourself and self-determining your future and your kids' future and your family's future. So I feel like, knowing the whole, this whole workshop, we really focus on values, because you just have to keep coming back to them. And it's so important to know what yours are, because you will have, a lot of times where you will think you've made the wrong decision, and that you'll need to keep coming back to those values and those collectivist values. And that's what we're all here together for, and we will all have different values, and because we all have different experiences, even though we all might be same culture, there are different, we have different colonial traumas, we have different individual traumas, and we have different experiences that make us who we are. So everyone, like, I would love to be able to just give you all the values, and go, there you go, done. But, it is that process of unpacking and self-reflecting constantly on yourself, and letting go of things that you thought were important that aren't important at all. And so I just wanted to add here before we go on, because we do have recordings of my beautiful sister-in-law, Adriana, so she couldn't make it. Did we say that? No. So she can't be here tonight because she's got someone's birthday. Yeah, it's Luna's birthday. So, but she sent us some recordings, and I just wanted to just really say that I feel so privileged that we have her, and because honestly, we want to allow a lot of space for her because she's the most experienced in this out of all of us. She's the one I always go to. She was the reason why I did this to begin with. And so anytime I've ever sort of had those moments of, oh, what am I doing? And like someone said this or someone said that, and I would just ring her and be like, and then she would just say the best thing and pull me through it. So I just hope that you guys feel as blessed as me to be able to have recordings of her now. Good way. She's going to be so ashamed. But anyway, we'll keep going. Thank you for listening.
Dear me. Thanks, Annie Layla. Also to the thing that Annie Adriana is going to be talking about. So if I click it, it's going to start the video straight away. So I just want to kind of give some context. So the question for her that we've asked her, because she's not a First Nations person from this country, but she's Indigenous to Costa Rica. Hey, is how have you embedded First Nations perspectives and also your own culture into your family's learning? And so I guess if you're on here and you're not a First Nations person to this country, this yarn that she's going to give, which by the way brought me to tears, and she's just so inspiring, it's going to help to answer those questions and give some more insight into that as well. So I'm just going to go to it, and if the recording is like working, can you just put your thumbs up or things like that, because we just don't want anything to glitch, because it's very deadly what she's going to yarn about. So I'm going to just mute myself again. Oh my god, what am I mute myself? Sorry, that was a really big G up. She's not actually, this is something that we're going to talk about as well. So it's just a quick little, it's not a quote, I guess it's more so just like a yarning point. But by choosing to homeschool, you are choosing to decolonize your child's educational journey. And we spoke about that at the start, and Annie Layla spoke about that as well. And so I guess keeping that mind open to, that reclamation of educational sovereignty and being on this journey as someone that's constantly decolonizing every single day. Okay, now I'm going to hand it to Annie Adriana.
One of the ways that we do this often is by...
Can you hear that? Oh, okay, I'll just start it again. Sorry, I actually have to unmute myself because I'm a rookie at this.
Hi, mamas. Sorry I can't be there for the live, but here's a little pre-recording that I have done for you. I hope it doesn't go too long. So I was asked, how do I embed First Nations perspectives and also my own culture into our family's learning? So firstly, one of the ways that we do this often is by learning and finding out and acknowledging whose land we're on, whose land we're traveling through, visiting, talking about, learning about. So finding out these original names and referring to that place from there on in is an important step that we do to embed perspective and learning. Also, my husband and I and my eldest, we took up Gatang language classes at our local cultural centre, and that was so much fun to learn that together, and then to come home and teach the little ones, and we'd always get handouts as well that we could then share with the little ones. That was a great experience for us, which it hasn't continued so much now after COVID. It's something that we definitely have to pursue a bit more. We also have language dictionaries in our local tongue and Kabi languages. We use this often to translate phrases and words and to simply speak these words out loud. It's a whole lot of fun and feels really good, and the kids enjoy going through dictionaries. We also get involved with as many activities as we can down here with our community and friends, be it dance classes, art classes, connection to country activities. The other way that we embed perspective, and I think is one of the most potent ways, is by actually just getting out there, traveling, meeting people, and getting amongst it firsthand and directly, speaking to friends as we travel, meeting new people. We don't do this as often as we used to now that we're here on our farm, but especially if Joel has gigs or medical opportunities working away, at least one or two of the kids go with him, and this is always so beneficial for their learning. My mestiza culture overlaps in many ways with First Nations perspectives here in Australia and around the globe. My people too, and lands were colonised by greedy white savages from afar, kings and queens in search of El Dorado, the gold and riches. So reclaiming my own Indigenous culture has been what set me free as an adult. It's given me strength and clarity around so many issues I have with this world and how it operates. That's why it is so important for me as a mother to make sure that my kids know this side of their bloodlines also. We yarn with my family overseas as often as we can. We visit when we can. We learn from my mum and my dad about our ways. We use food. Food is so important to us culturally, and we love to cook and share. Plants also, we've been learning what plants grow in Costa Rica and how they were used medicinally and ceremonially. Language, songs, and stories. So also by speaking about the similarities and differences between our cultures, this is always a great deep dive into learning for us as a family. I always like to get my children to think and imagine who walked, lived, sat, danced, and died on any given spot that we might be at, be it in nature or concrete jungle, and what it may have looked like pre-colonization. Then I get them to imagine the future and use what knowledge our ancestors would have had, what we have now, and what we can take into the future with us to improve our way of life and that of our planet.
Deadly. Thank you, Auntie Adriana. I hope that you've got some really deadly notes from that yarn. I know I did when I was listening to it. So as we continue on, did you have anything? Oh, Ayla, did you have anything you wanted to add on to that? Or Auntie Bernice? No, you're right to keep going. Okay, sweet. All right. So as we continue on, I guess the question that you need to ask yourself, you might be in this Zoom or on this workshop tonight because you are already homeschooling or unschooling or whatever type of schooling you call it, or you might be somebody that is thinking about it or considering it. And this slide here is really important because we all may have varying reasons. So I guess it's really important to ask yourself that question before, I guess, getting into it, or as you continue on with it, is why am I doing this? What is the purpose of it? And I know I shared with some of you last week about, some of the reasons why we chose to do it. And it really was, for the purpose of connection with our children. And so you've got to, I guess, figure out what your reason for doing this is. And so You know, you can see on the screen, it might be you want them to have connection to country, or connection to culture, or connection to holistic health, or creative ways of learning, or community and kin. And so this is something that's really important to think about when, you know, you are deciding to do this. And I think it's also important to know that, you know, all of our children have specific and different needs. And so their needs might be, you know, something that's a different need, that's mentally or physically or emotionally. And sometimes that white stream system might not be able to support them in those needs, or it might not be able to help them to fulfill the things that they're wanting to achieve as those little individual, wonderful humans that they are. And, you know, some of these might have chosen to do this because, you know, your kids might have not had the best experience in school, but whatever the reason is, I think it's important to remember that, you know, you've got to think about the lens that you're homeschooling in or unschooling in, and thinking about how to stay connected to your children. And then I guess everything else then starts to kind of fall in its place. And I know that we've had conversations about that, you know, a lot of the times, where it's like we start for this reason and then it might change and it kind of evolves. And so asking yourself why you're here and why you're doing that. So if you would have got your pre-reading PDF, if you're in the Facebook community, and if you're not, please just send us a message so that we can make sure we send you the invitation to do that. But we've spoken a lot about connecting to your children, and this whole journey of decolonizing our education and reclaiming back educational sovereignty is really about connecting with our children. And we know that, you know, the white stream system, it has these children and they put them all in the box, and they're going through at the same age, and they're trying to keep them all going through at the same pace and the same speed, and everyone's just got to get it. But we know, even as adults, that we are not all the same, and we're different, and the way that we learn is different, and the way that we connect and understand and retain information is different as well. And so, Annie-Leila, do you want to share more on this, or are you happy for me to just talk about this? And so basically, Annie-Leila was actually the inspiration behind these two particular things. And so one of them, the Dare to Lead list of values, is by Brené Brown. And it's a values activity that actually gets you and your family and your children to actually establish what your values are. And so I think it's important that when you are establishing that, then you can actually start to have a better understanding of how to actually connect with your children and yourself and the people that are in your home. The other one is the 16 personalities test. And I've done that on myself, and it was like pretty spot on. I did it on my son, and it was quite shocking. And I think the cool thing about, not the thing about that, but the deadly thing about these personality tests is it shows you the strengths of your personality. And then it also shows weaknesses and different things that will affect these types of personality types. And this is really important when it comes to, I guess, being at home with our children, because there might be a day where, you know, they're on top of the world and it feels like learning is a breeze. And then there might be other days where it's just not cutting it. And it could be because of their personality. It could be because of their hormones, our hormones. I know I'm very hormonal sometimes. But these tests are really a deadly way just to connect with each other and see each other, so that then we can then make sure that what we're doing is coming from that place of connection. And so I think it's really important. So these are going to be uploaded into the community so that you can find where to do them. And you know what, I think it's important too to remember that if you don't get them done, it's not the end of the world. This is just something that we put in there as, I guess, a guide or something that could support that further connection with your children. And also just to be conscious of, okay, how am I going to connect with them? How am I going to, I guess, provide them learning experiences that is relevant to who they are as human beings and individuals? And so, yeah, that was there for that reason. So I hope that, yeah, you can find some value in that. Do you want to? Oh, yeah, go.
So I just want to add, sorry.
My bad.
I just wanted to add there that you can also do a learning style test as well. You can just Google that and find one online that will then tell you, you know, you can sort of talk your child through it, and it'll just sort of give you an idea of whether they're really quite visual or hands-on. But I think if all of your kids are young, they're probably all going to be quite tactile and visual anyway. But sometimes it's just nice to, I think, especially when you have a lot of kids, like 4 kids, yeah, it's like trying to keep up with them is hard. I do the personality test. I do try and do that every year if I can, just because I find that they do change and they grow as people. The Dare to Lead list of values, so we only gave you the list. We don't really give the instructions on how to do it, but I'm happy to just jump on the Facebook, and if anyone wants to do it, just give them a rundown on how to do it. So what I did was just sort of looking at your when your values have been tested. So that's one of the best ways to figure out what your values are, is when you've had a really hard time and what was being tested at that time, because yeah, that worked for me. Yeah, so that I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Annie. Right there. Sorry, it's just a little bit tricky with me navigating between the mute button. Thank you for sharing that, Annie. Okay, so what homeschooling styles are there? Now we're going to be doing a quiz, and we expect you all to know the different styles by the end of this session. But basically, this is just a little picture that we got off the internet that shows some of the different styles of learning that there is. Look, I think that it's really important to remember we keep talking about connection and that connection with our well-being, and so it's not a one size fits all. And so a part of decolonizing parenting and decolonizing education and this entire journey is about getting to know your children individually and then creating a learning plan that suits them individually and holistically. And so I'm going to share a little bit about mine. Annie Layla will share some about hers, and then so will Annie Bernice, and then Annie Adriana will got another recording of hers. But just really quickly, I guess when I first started, I don't really feel like, because I'm not a teacher, my background isn't in teaching. But for me, when I first started, it was more so like doing workbooks and, doing handwriting books and math books and different things like that. And as we've continued on, I've realized that, well, my daughter, she's very creative. And so she wants to do art and craft all day till midnight, and then doesn't want to go to sleep, and then wants to wake up at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then my big boy, he really likes to do, workbooks and things like that. But as we've continued on, both of them have changed so much. And so we're doing an eclectic type of style at the moment. And it's just really about them and listening to them. And there are times where I feel like I get stressed and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be judged. Oh, the kids aren't reading, or they're not writing, or they're not doing this. And then I guess it's that colonized mindset of, if our kids aren't doing it the way that the white stream system is doing it, then it must be wrong, but that's not true. And so I think for me, in my everyday, when I do start feeling those thoughts of anxiousness and guilt and all that kind of stuff, I have to just like settle myself down and be like, okay, what is it that we are trying to achieve here? And it's connection. And connection leads to then doing things that the kids want to do. And so for me, it is eclectic, but I am starting to trial a little bit of unschooling, and that's been interesting. But yeah, that's just a little bit about what I do. I guess every day looks different in my house. The other day, my big boy didn't want to do any handwriting work, and he didn't really want to do anything. And so then it was dinner time, and I said to him, oh, look, do you want to cook dinner with me? And he's like, oh yeah, I'll give it a try. And then he ended up taking over and cooking the whole meal. And so that was learning, and he really enjoyed it, and he felt it was valuable, and he was so proud of himself. And so I think for me, being open to being flexible as well with the, the way that we do teach our children, and also being conscious that as they get older, they're going to change. Just like as we've gotten older, we've grown, we've transformed, and we've changed as well. So that's a little bit about my style. Ayla's going to share some of her style now.
Yeah.
So sorry, everyone.
All right. Yeah, but it's like you can see it as a present, not as a. It's all right with our notes. Sorry, guys, we're figuring it out. I don't think we should
Okay, I'm just gonna stop the share. And then I'll reshare again. Do you need to see that screen?
No, I don't need to see the screen. So yeah, so basically I just went when I started mine because I'm a reader and I like reading crap and I like theories and looking into all that stuff. I went and looked at all the different styles and was like, oh, what's Montessori and what's Charlotte Mason, and sort of researched them. And we researched these amazing women, I feel like, that pushed against the system that they were under and tried to recreate education that they thought would work. And so I feel like I take some from a lot of them. Like Montessori is very hands-on. Charlotte Mason uses narratives and people who are actually really passionate about the subject. So you wouldn't get a art teacher to teach English like you do at school. There would be there's an artist who's really passionate about art, and so they write these living books. So all these sort of things really spoke to me, that I was like, oh, I like that and I like that and I like that. But at the end of the day, I feel like we recreate our own style. And even though it's not bad to go and look into these theories, because it does give you some pretty cool ideas and pretty cool sort of things that you could use. I think that the whole idea of compartmentalizing things and being like, oh, okay, no one's going to go, well, I feel like no one would, but maybe people would go oh, I only teach Montessori style. So if they want to do something else, I'm only doing Montessori. I feel like we would be if your kids wanted something else, you would teach them something else. I've also had kids who really hated some styles, within my own family, and then liked others. So yeah, for me, it was just definitely about adapting. I think unschooling is definitely the one where you really, really focus on that. And you really look at the young person. It's not it's hard to do. I think some people think that unschooling is just you do nothing and the child just does whatever they want to do, but there's a lot of techniques to it, and there's a lot of awareness that you need to have constantly. I remember I would have a diary that I would just be writing in after every day, anything that they brought up, so that I could bring that out the next day, anything that they suggested, so that I could just keep going with that. So they all do have some really cool different little techniques that can be used. I think that's all I really need to say.
Thanks, Annie Layla. Annie Byrne, did you want to share your style of learning?
Well, when I first saw this, I had no idea that they had all these little parts of learning. So, but when I read into it, I saw that over the 10 years I had been doing a little bit of everything, but more so eclectic style. Like my first daughter, she was very easy to teach. She was in the books and she loved that kind of work. And I thought, oh, this is a breeze. This is going to be no problems with my next child. Then I had my second child 5 years later, and she was a total different learner, and she was more hands-on, and she made my life a little bit more harder. And then I've got two younger boys that I know that boys are more, practical and like to do things hands-on. So now moving over to HEU, home education, I found that it's been a lot more flexible, because this is only my second month into doing home education unit with Talisha and Layla. I found that it's really much more flexible, and the kids are loving it, and I'm a little bit more relaxed, not so Nazi kind of strict. But yeah, the recent week we've lost a dog, and it's been really good because we've been able to take the kids to the beach, because they haven't been able to focus on doing work. So yeah, we're a bit of everything on that thing. So yeah, thank you.
Deadly. Thank you, Ani. All right, I'm going to now just let Ani Adriana share about her style. Let's get this screen right. I'm so sorry about this whole screen situation as well, everyone. Okay. All right, here we go.
So I call our style eclectic unschooling because we take the best parts of whatever we want, whatever style, and put them together. Just tailor it for each child, and also just pretty much go with our flow. You know, like most, I started out my first year of homeschooling trying to recreate school at home, and only to find ourselves fully frustrated, burnt out, and angry. I let that go. By the end of the year, we were that tired that I had to let go of all control that I was trying to maintain within our homeschool days. All our schedules went out the window, all expectations I had, I let go of the feelings of judgment, the feelings that I had to prove something to somebody. You know, this all I just let go of. And that, without realizing, was our deschooling period. So that was our time to release old programming we had, to rest and recover from a system that was doing us more harm than good. And there I was trying to recreate that in my home. So no wonder we were just flat out exhausted. But thankfully, you know, we went through that experience and learned and grew. And I realized that by the end of the second year, what learning actually was about, what education was about for my child, and us as a family, what worked best. So we played a lot. We did things that brought us joy every day. It didn't matter what time of day or what day of the week it was. And, you know, it became quite clear that this was how we learned, that this was real, that that was sustainable and is natural learning. Being the support person, I don't like to use the word teacher so much, facilitator, and seeing my child just gain that confidence and want to learn and continue learning is like pure magic and joy. You know, being able to see them uncover their own techniques of learning and that their skills that they take on into the future, which is so important. So we do mostly child-led learning, and this is not where parents do nothing or do everything, you know, that the child says, but it is actually being more aware and present as to what your child's interests are and how you can best facilitate their learning. So we have to provide opportunity, support, and resources for them to be able to gain these techniques on their own, with us by their sides, of course.
Totally. Oh, thank you, Annie Adriana. Yes, clicks to that. So the reason why we chose these things as workshop 1 is because this is all about building those strong foundations for this journey. And so knowing that strong foundations make for lasting impact. And when I think about what we are trying to achieve as people who are decolonizing education, decolonizing parenting, and really reclaiming educational sovereignty, is, you know, we are people that are wanting to do something that is long lasting and something that has longevity. But, you know, I think it's also important to remember too that it's okay if our children change again. They're like, oh, well, we want to get to school. Because I know that's what happened to me with my kids last year. You know, I was like, no, I'm going to be a homeschool for the rest of my life. That's it. This is the path. And then at the end of the year before, they were like, oh, yeah, we want to try school now. And I was like, wild. And I was just thinking to myself, what do you mean you want to try school? We're meant to be these homeschoolers for life, like sold out for life in little cakes. And then I had to do all this administration and friggin' enroll them and blah, blah, blah. And then day one, Georgie comes home and he's like, yeah, like, why do I have to wear shoes all day? And why can't I go to the toilet when I need to go to the toilet? And why can't I eat when I want to eat? I'm like, because you're going to school. That's why. No, good ways. But like, you know, the plan that we had as a family was this, yep, it's homeschool. And then the children would decide, no, we want to try it. And so they tried it. Georgie lasted 3 weeks. Blessing lasted 4 weeks. And then that was it. They were like, no, we want to come back home and we want to do homeschooling again. So I think that it's important to remember that when we are laying these strong, lasting foundations, it's also important to keep your mind open, because they also might change their minds and they might want to do something else completely different that throws a spanner in the works. But I guess it's just keeping that openness to this entire process of raising these amazing little humans that are going to change the world. Annie Layla, Annie Ben, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
My daughter also wanted to try. She had never been to school. So my daughter also wanted to try school in year 8, and that was 2 years ago. And she loved it. So it does happen. So you just have to be prepared if you do come across, get to that bridge. Yeah, but now she's back into homeschool again, against her will.
There you go. Take her out of that system now, gammon. Okay. So when you think about some practical ways of how am I going to do this, in the next workshop next week, we are going to be covering how to register for homeschool in Queensland and also creating your annual education plans. And so we're going to provide some, I guess, insight into that and some resources on how to do that. But this here is just an example. I hope you can see the whole screen, because I actually can't see the whole screen with all these little bar things up everywhere. Oh, yep. Now you can. Sorry. So what this is an example for my family. It's different for Annie Layla's family, to Dinara's family, another facilitator, Annie Adriana's, Annie Berg. It's different for everyone. Remember, it's not one size fits all. But when you're thinking about your homeschool, it's important to, in order to lay those strong foundations, you want to think about, okay, well, what are my values? What are my beliefs? What are we trying to achieve with our children? And so when my husband and I sat down, we talked about the things that we wanted our children to be learning. It formed our family pillars, or our learning pillars. And so this is what it actually looks like for my family. And so we wanted them to be learning about their family and kin, caring for country, justice and community service, spirituality, creativity, and holistic health. And so everything that we do, the reason why we chose a tree is because a tree it brings life, but it also reminds me of being a Black family that has big connections and a big forest in terms of our genealogy. And then you can see underneath there, the roots are all interconnected, because it's not, when it comes to our learning and the way that we learn as Bama people, everything is interconnected, and something might inform something else, and then it just kind of continues like a domino effect. And so everything that we do here has that First Nations perspective and that influence and that lived experience as well. And if there's things that aren't lived experiences, then we'll go and we'll seek out family members or other people in our community that can help us with something that we might not be able to, I guess, give them all the information about. So this is just an example. Yours might look completely different. I think it's important to take note as well. I was talking to Layla, I was saying to her just tonight, like we've created this family learning pillars. I haven't looked at them since the start of the year. And so I literally just printed it out last week, because I was like, oh, we're doing a workshop on it. I should probably print it out so it's in the front of my, it's in my mind's eye view. But sometimes this stuff is just inside of us. And so, we might say, oh, we want to make a learning pillar about family and kin or caring for country. But I think sometimes this stuff is inside of us as human beings, and as, Black fellas that have that yearning and that desire for, wanting to connect with the land and connect with our community. And so I think sometimes it's important to remember that, if it doesn't look like this, or you don't want to do anything like this, that it's just got to come from within. And it's also about that connection again, and how you want to I guess, connect with your child and structure what learning looks like. Or you might not want it to be structured. It's up to you. But this is just an example. Sorry, did you want to yarn about that now in this section? I'm not sure. Okay. Sorry, we're just having a little yarn.
Sorry.
To make sure that we're covering everything. Did you want to talk about it on this? Yeah, okay. Annie Layla's just going to add some points to this section. So let me just mute myself. Okay.
All right. So I think it is important to add here, and like we might have put it in another workshop, but just in case we didn't, we just to add to talk about, you know, you determining success for your child and what success looks like for you. It's very important, and it, you know, helps you to stay true to, if you have collectivist cultural values, it helps you to stay true to those. So that was a really huge thing for me, was to not be task oriented but connection oriented. And so I feel like sometimes we can, when we're writing these plans, because we're preparing you to write an annual plan, and so when we're writing them, sometimes we can feel really task oriented, and so we make these goals that are quite dry. Oh, good ways. But so an example of it would be if you were trying to teach your child to read, an example of task oriented would be that your child learns how to read, and so then you're just doing stuff to try to teach them how to read. Whereas connection oriented would be that success would be for them to develop a love of reading, and or have a passion for the being able to read. So then that sort of helps to inform the way that you teach. Well, it did for me. And so an example I can give you is that you know, there's a program called Jolly Phonics. My husband's a teacher, so I get some expensive programs sometimes and get to use them at home. But so they use Jolly Phonics in his school. And so I was trying to teach my 10-year-old, who's 10 now, and he was like 4 or something. And it was like, I don't know if any of you have seen Jolly Phonics, but it sucks, like good ways. It's like just really like, there's a part like where you've got to go, here goes the mouse. I think some people would like it, all right, but my kids are like really ghetto, and so they were like, I mean, to the point that they were repulsed by it. So when I would say, oh, let's do Jolly Phonics, and I would even do like try and do the whole, you know, he would get yeah, like, you know, when you're like so repulsed by something that you just can't even. So I remember I probably stuffed up because I did push too much to do it. And there's a lot of other teachers who homeschool as well, and they all kept telling me, oh, don't do it yet. But there was all this pressure, like there was this pressure that, you know, if he wasn't going to read, then, you know, he'd be dumb, and, you know, how we just put all these pressures on ourselves anyway. And even though Adriana kept telling me, like, he is going to read when he's ready, I haven't taught any of mine specifically how to read. They all just learned how to read, you know. And so, but I was like, that can't be possible. So so anyway, I ended up sort of doing a bit of a, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to connect with him and teach him that reading is important. And so we watched Storyline online, and we watched this book called As Fast as Words Could Fly. And it's about a young African-American boy who is, his dad's a civil rights leader. And so he's like, oh, you know, he had to write all the letters for his dad and read all the letters, and because his dad couldn't read and write. And so, you know, that really opened up this conversation around, oh, well, you know, that it's actually a privilege to be able to learn how to do this, and it has a purpose. And I also had a puppet that I called Mr. Gungai. And so, because I could see that my kids would sometimes learn from other people, but like they would be sort of more receptive and more open. And so I got this puppet and I called him Mr. Gungai, and he was like them old uncle, you know, like I would just really go, yeah, you know, and so I could use language, and he would explain to them, you know, that when I was little, I wasn't even allowed to go to school. I lived on a mission, you know, like, and it was, they would just be so like engrossed in it. And so there's so many different sort of techniques that you can use. But I feel like if we stay really task oriented, it's really hard to look at those techniques because all you're trying to do is tick a box. And so when you make it connection oriented, I feel like this whole world opens up and you can sort of go, like I'd say to my son, oh, I can't wait till you can read so that you can escape and you can go to these different lands and this, because I actually really, really love books. And I'd say to him, you get transported to other places and you get to experience things that you would never experience, you know, just through reading. And he would just be like, what? You know, and so, well, he can read now, so that's good. But I'm just trying to give you an example of, you know, just trying to not be task oriented, but connection oriented was very helpful for me. So I hope it's helped somebody.
Thank you for sharing that, Annie. I love that, connection orientated. I think we need to make a little document now of all the deadly quotes that are coming out in these workshops. So going off what Annie Layla was saying in terms of being connection orientated, we put this photo in there because as a co-op, the Guragaram First Nations co-op, we organised a camp. And so the deadly thing about this co-op is that there was 5 families and we we're all actually connected by blood. And so we had, I think, 22 kids there. There was 30 of us, I think, in total, and 22 kids. I don't know, someone count the kids there. But anyways, all of these children here, what we did was we had a end of year graduation night / celebration for them all. And this was such an amazing time because, you know, with Annie Layla talking about being connection orientated, what happened was the family groups would get up and then they would have the certificates for each child and they would call each child out individually. And then the parents would then talk about what this child achieved in this year or in the last 12 months. And it was so deadly to hear the things that they were, you know, congratulating the children on. And some were like, you know, we just wanted to congratulate you on growing in your confidence this year. And another one was, we wanted to congratulate you on, you know, being fearless and wrangling a bull when the bull got out of the friggin' gate. And other ones were, you know, being an amazing listener and, you know, I guess improving in your handwriting, whatever it was. But I guess the deadly thing about it was that it was that connection with the kids, connection with them, and really looking at who they are and shining light on just those amazing things that they are doing and how they're growing and they're developing. And so we wanted to put this in there because we just felt like, you know, it was very impactful. And as a parent, looking at what was going on, it really brought tears to my eyes because, like, this is really powerful. Like, it's not just about, oh, you got A's and you got B's and all this kind of stuff, but it was like, no, you have an amazing character and you are being helpful and you are being kind and you're caring and you're passionate about social justice and you're passionate about looking after our country and all of these different things like that, which is totally connection orientated. So, you know, I think it's important when we think about what we're doing with that, you know, what we're doing with this journey is that we're providing our children and our Walby with these opportunities for them to have enlightening experiences. Like, wow, is this the life that I'm living? This is amazing. This is deadly. You know, there's so much more than just ticking the box and so much more than just getting A's and B's and so much fun. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting A's and B's, because if you can do that, you're friggin' gangster as well. But I'm just saying, you know, creating those experiences so that it's memorable for them and it really places value on who they are as an individual and a human being. So now what we're going to do is we're going to let Auntie Adriana again share about some of her homeschool foundations. One of our other sisters who couldn't be on here tonight, she's also a facilitator or a part of the co-op, Tintanara. She was just sharing about, for her, some of the things that she really, I guess, values with in terms of her homeschool foundations is her faith, her family, culture and traditions, and life skills. And so, you know, we just keep talking about going back to the drawing board and having a yarn, you know, with your family or your children about the things that you want to achieve as a family and as a family that is choosing this as a path. And so, you know, it's exciting to see that, you know, there's so many differences and we all have different values and beliefs, but that connection to children is what connection to children, each other. And so this is Auntie Adriana now on the next slide, sharing about some of the foundations that form what they do.
How do you build strong homeschooling foundations? for long-lasting impact. Strong homeschool foundations, in my opinion, are built by including our children in every step of the way, respecting their autonomy, ideas, suggestions, and their own personal values. They are born already with such wisdom, creativity, and motivation. Most of the time, it's us as parents and society that get in their way. You know, we do this to ourselves, even as adults. We just stop ourselves from pursuing things that bring us joy, our own creativity. So this is something that I do not want to do to my children. Family meetings and planning, be it weekly or monthly or even half yearly sometimes. At these meetings, we work out what each of us is holding dear to our hearts, you know, what excites us, what has been challenging us, or what challenges we want, and how are we going to strive towards this as a family, community, and individuals. At these meetings is when also, as parents and guiding influences, we can hold, we can show them what we hold dear and valuable and what insights we have for them to carry forth during this time, be it a quote or a mantra that you can either come up with yourself or as family. My kids still remember some of ours that we've used throughout the years, especially my older girls. I know that they actually still sometimes use the ones we've come up with. The other day, my second eldest even asked, "Oh, can we get this tattooed?" And it was actually a mantra I'd actually forgotten about. But she says she still uses it to this day, and it's helped to gain confidence and guidance in some situations when I haven't been there. Another important foundation is how we view and express ourselves regarding education and learning. And by that, I don't mean school. So, you know, learning is such a natural part of our lives. It doesn't end when we finish high school or tertiary studies. It is ongoing till we die. So I even tell our kids that we even learn during our sleep, you know, by speaking about the beauty of learning, of growing our minds, our spirits and soul by what we can learn, by what's out there, by what we have access to. Our foundation becomes solid. You know, it is natural. Learning is lifelong, and it knows no boundaries or set times or places. And allowing learning to become as natural and as normal and essential as breathing is a beautiful thing to strengthen your homeschooling, or actually life, I think, in general. So then the next question is, what are your family values and beliefs? Well, this felt like a bit of a massive question, so I'll try and keep it short. But ultimately, our values encompass happiness, love, gratitude, respect, and sovereignty. And this is for life, you know, for the life we've been given, the body we're in, the time and place we're living in. Respect for all creatures on our Madre Tierra, Mother Nature. The personal happiness, that personal happiness is as important as the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the quality of nourishment that we put into our bodies. I believe in being responsible for as much, for what we need, for what we create and desire in this world, be it our children, our rubbish, our food, energy, our luxuries, you know, to consider what footprint and legacy we are leaving behind and what our children are carrying forward. How will I become a descendant worth descending from? Hence why we homeschool, where we live on a farm in the bush, teaching them how to grow and harvest their own food, how to make their own medicines and build and repair, and to have a solid connection to Mother Nature herself. In a world that grows ever more disconnected to nature and our own sovereignty, where we continue to just hand over this, hand over that, you know, these skills and mindset and love will ensure that they can make it anywhere, just like your ancestors, my ancestors. You know, we have this resilient knowledge and How do you build strong homeschooling foundations
Sorry.
for long-lasting impact?
Oh my God. Sorry,
How do you
everyone.
build strong homeschooling, our luxuries, you know, to consider what footprint and legacy we are leaving behind and what our children are carrying forward? How will I become a descendant worth descending from? Hence why we homeschool, why we live on a farm in the bush, teaching them how to grow and harvest their own food, how to make their own medicines and build and repair, and to have a solid connection to Mother Nature herself. In a world that grows ever more disconnected to nature and our own sovereignty, where we continue to just hand over this, hand over that, you know, these skills and mindset and love will ensure that they can make it anywhere, just like your ancestors, my ancestors. You know, we have this resilience, knowledge, and connection to something far greater and higher. They can bring this forth to modern times and reinvent, reclaim, and thrive. So thank you so much for listening and joining us. It's exciting to have you here on this journey. I wish you all the best. Thanks.
Thank you, Annie Adriana. Annie Layla did cover this, and I guess this is coming to the end of our session. But basically, all of the things that we are yarning about tonight is essential to building those strong homeschool foundations. And so, you know, she was talking about that self-determination when it comes to what we're doing, and it's being essential, an essential thing that you as a family member, you as the person that's, you know, the mentor, if it's homeschooling or unschooling or whatever it is that you're choosing to do, that you collectively are narrating the narrative around your family's learning and educational journey and foundations. And so, you know, we hope that during this session or during this workshop tonight, that this helped you just to lay some foundations. It's like building a house. And so we're building the foundations, and then in the next couple of weeks going to give you some tools then to create the walls and then put the roof on, so that then it's a strong foundation and a strong structure for you to, and when I say structure, I'm not talking about like, oh, in a box, I'm talking about physical, you know, if we're using the house terminology, the house analogy, that structure that's going to help you to, I guess, go on this journey and feel that peace that, you know, you are doing the right thing, but also giving yourself that flexibility that if it doesn't feel right, that you can also change and, you know, I guess, adapt to what's going on as well. So some other information and resources as we start to wrap up. If you haven't already registered as a homeschooler, you can register through the Queensland Government Department of Education Home Education Unit website. We do actually talk about all of that next week, and next week we're actually going to show you step by step how to do that. But if you are someone that's already, you know, in that process and you're wanting to do it, that's where you can go for that. We'd also encourage you to get connected to the Girragarum First Nations homeschool community, because a lot of the things that we're talking about, we'll be doing recaps on it as well, just to refresh our memories. We know that we've got, you know, families, lives, commitments, and so we might forget some of the stuff that we talk about. So we'll be posting some more recap stuff in there and other deadly resources. There's also the Queensland Home Education Facebook groups, and also local Facebook groups as well, wherever you're living and residing. There's also some deadly First Nation resources at Riley Cowley Resources. Hopefully they give us a discount soon because we're plugging them. Corey Curriculum, Wingaroo Education. There's some really deadly stuff where, you know, you can just get practical things that help you with that whole connection orientated journey. Now your action steps to bring to next week's workshop, because, you know, we just got to give you something, a little something to action, but we didn't want to say homework, so it's called action steps. So if you, from now till next week, can write down your family values and establish and write down your learning pillars, so that you can bring that to workshop 2, so that then we can show you examples of how to create your individual annual learning plans for your Wildlife. And then obviously joining the Facebook groups like we just said to do in the last slide. And then we've also sent out a workshop 1 pre-reading PDF. And so that's just got the links to the personality test, the value test, some great resources to give you a bit of, I guess, an understanding of how education was set up and the schooling, the White Stream School was set up. And just some really deadly information too about some other places that are really doing some great decolonising education work over in New Zealand, and got some other really good resources there too about schooling that's happening here in so-called Australia. So there's some of your action steps. Look, we totally get it. If you get to next week and you're like, oh my God, I did nothing, that's okay as well. So we're all on this journey together. And so if you do have any questions or, you know, you do have kind of any concerns or whatever, then just reach out to us and we're here. And that's why we have that online community. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the share because that is the conclusion of our workshop 1. And I'm very excited because it's actually 8:17 and we anticipated it was going to go till 8:15. So I'm going to stop share now. And if any of you have any questions about anything we've spoken about, or you've got questions about other things that we didn't talk about, now is the time to have a yarn about that. So let me just have a look if there's anything in the comments. No worries, Billy. Thank you for joining, brother. Serena, did I see your hand up before, sis? If you do have a question, if you want to ask it, or you can even post it in the group if you can't ask it. Oh, that was your baby. Okay, your baby's got a question. That's all good. Did anyone want to? Did you have any questions about anything? What did you feel about tonight? Is it what you expected tonight was going to be, or did it just totally fail, or did it blow your mind? Talk to me. Talk to us. Oh, yes, Kelly. How are you, sis? We can't hear you.
Hi. Okay. I just had a question about your pillars, your family values that you shared. What does the justice and community service one look like in everyday life with the kids?
That is a stinking deadly question.
Please.
So what that looks like on an everyday life. So in the community, I'm involved with the Our Islands, Our Home campaign, which is a campaign that is raising awareness about climate justice in the Torres Straits. And so on an everyday, I guess, scale, what that looks like is me sitting down and yarning with the kids about the effects of climate change. And also then what we can do as a family to reduce our personal footprint in our home. So like talking about recycling and things like that. But then also to like the Our Islands, Our Home campaign in particular has a lot of resources and videos and things that you can watch that's family friendly. So during a lesson, or not a lesson, but during a, just sitting down in the day and we're doing some learning, we'll go onto YouTube and go into the Our Islands, Our Homes campaign's YouTube channel, and we'll just start watching videos about what's going on up there in the islands. Being, I guess, people that descend from there as well, it's very important for our family that even though we don't live on the islands, we're still advocating for the islands. And so it's also about, we're about to, as a co-op, we've been yarning about doing a science experiment to show the kids we're going to looking at creating the islands out of like paper mache or clay or something, and then actually putting some ice blocks in a big tub and putting hair dryers on it and actually showing them what it looks like when the water is rising. And so giving them a visual of what it looks like, so that then we can say, okay, how can we then advocate in terms of climate justice and things like that. Another thing as well is into getting our children involved with Invasion Day rallies and protests, yeah, different things like that. That's what we do. There's also the Climate Justice Warriors released a coloring in book. And so when my daughter is using that as an art project, just talking to her about the people that created the book, why they created the book, and then yarning about if there's anything that we can do as a family to then amplify the climate justice advocacy group as well, and what's going on in the Pacifica areas, because the children are also Tongan, Solomon Island and Fijian as well. So that's what it looks like daily, but it does change depending on what's going on. But that's, I guess, the most recent stuff that we've been doing in terms of social justice and yeah, those types of things. Does that answer your question, sis? Okay, totally. Thank you for that question. Anyone else got any other questions? Tasha, did your little boy just put his hand up before? Oh, does he have a question? Oh, okay. No.
Lazaya, do you have a question?
Yes.
What is it?
Maze.
You want to talk about mazes?
Yeah.
Oh, what kind of mazes?
Box.
Box. Okay. Well, thank you for asking everyone about boxes and mazes. If they do, what do they do that in homeschooling with their kids?
Thank you, Bala. We do geocaching. That's not similar though, eh? We go geocaching and look for treasure. And
My kids do a lot of Lego building as well.
yeah,
So that's a lot of fun.
yes, yeah. Mine have been collecting the Woolworths Lego stuff lately and been creating heaps of stuff out of that as well. Actually, with the whole unschooling thing that we've been trialing yesterday and today, they both were, I guess, like obsessed with Lego. They are obsessed with Lego, but they were doing Lego, I don't know, for over an hour, just and talking and discussing what they're creating. And then I came into the room and I'm like, oh, what are you up to? Because I just let them go. Like, oh, this is our farm and this is our chickens and the eggs that they laid, and you know, just going through all that stuff. So yeah, thank you, Bala, for sharing about mazes. We really appreciate that. And that's definitely something that, you know, anyone could do all that kind of stuff. You know, it's child-led, so it's really deadly.
I really liked, there was a point that someone shared about, I think it was only Layla, she was sharing about, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm in the dark putting these kids nearly to sleep. So, but no, Auntie Layla shared a really cool point about is it task led weaning? Led weaning, like I've heard new stuff. No, but it's really cool because I think that was really what I was thinking for my boys. I've been doing like unschooling at home and just teaching them gardening and things that are practical now, and like just seeing, like I already told my husband that my son, he'll never step foot in the school because of how he learns. He wants to be in the garden, he wants to dig, he wants to see how to weed, how to garden. And so like it's just really cool to hear all the foundations, and like, because I was the same, I was thinking like, oh my God, my daughter's at school, but my boys, I just feel like the school system will ruin them, like, you know. So I'm really excited to hear more on how you supported your boys in learning, because that's something that I'm really excited about. And yeah, it's really, really cool, like to get started and write down my values for next week. So thank you.
That's deadly, my sister girl. Oh, okay. Well, we've got time for like 1 or 2 more questions if anyone has any questions or thoughts. Doesn't have to be a question, it could just be a thought. Billy,
Yes,
you
thank
have your hand up.
You can hear me? Okay. Thank you again, Alicia, for the wonderful presentation tonight, the first workshop. I just wanted to acknowledge and also thank all of you mothers who are here tonight. And thank you for the wonderful work that you are doing on your own to rethink and also trying to decolonize education and parenting also as well. I'm not a parent yet, but I was really interested on the process that you guys are in. I'm from New Caledonia, and here we are still colonized by the French. So our educational system is the French system, and it's new for me to hear about homeschooling, and especially in the way that you are trying to do to integrate more of your culture in trying to educate your children. I think it's really powerful for me to see that we had a time when we started to fight politically for our independence and for people to be recognized as a as a people from the French, and so we started a kind of school like this in our own tribe to teach our children our culture, because we started to lose it. Our children couldn't speak anymore their languages. They couldn't. Our parents' generation, they forbid them to dance our cultural dances and to do our rituals like this. It's just since 1975 that we were allowed again to practice our cultural gathering and rituals like this. So we have lost many, but we have still kept some. So this school uh, started to be built in our villages to keep that, to keep our culture. So we taught them how to build our traditional houses, our languages, how to carve, how to plant, how to fish, like how we live, our way of living. The school system is still the French, and we are trying now to incorporate more of our traditional knowledge in the school system. And I just wanted to share one experience from the island where I'm working now. One of the elder from here study mathematics, and he was able to develop uh, mathematics from our cultural concept. So he came back and opened a school, kind of center, where he developed all of his pedagogy, but based on our cultural concept to teach mathematics. So when he came back, our politics, like political leader, they were not really they didn't really believe in what he did. but then he opened his center. He took like maybe a dozen of children who dropped school, and he taught them to do mathematics from our language and from our cultural concept. He worked with them like for 2 to 3 years, and then he put them again in the public school system, and they could see the change. Could see the change also in their way of doing school. So yeah, that was just one experience that I was thinking of listening to you. We are trying also here to decolonize our school system. It does not benefit our children, and I really thank for the this night, for the sharing tonight, because it's like showing me maybe alternatives to educational system that we can do also on our own. We have our own way also to educate our children. So thank you again for all of the sharing tonight, and thank you for letting me be part of the of this wonderful discussion. And just last point, if I can, yeah, tomorrow it will be the 8th of March, and here in the country we celebrate women tomorrow. So I wish to you in advance happy day for tomorrow, and thank you again for all the wonderful work you are doing. Oleti.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you so much. It's really exciting to have you, you know, in these sessions as well, being in another country. And I think as you were talking about that, it just reminded me of the work that we have to continuously do because of colonization. And, you know, this work is sometimes really tiring work and hard work. But I think, you know, there's that quote that says that we're better together and we're stronger when we're together. And I think that when I think about and I look around at all your deadly faces on here, it just reminds me that I feel like, you know, our children they're in good hands. I hope that they're in good hands. But that as we continue to do this together, that it just strengthens the work that we're all doing, you know, for these little world changes that will change the world and will influence 7 generations from us. And so, you know, I'll just leave everyone with the quote if Annie Bernoni Layla doesn't have anything else to add. But there's a quote that I love, and it says, "May we be people that plant seeds, that grows trees, in whose shade we may never sit under." And I really love that. That resonates so much with me because I think about the work that we're doing. We might not see everything that we're doing. We might not see all the work that we're doing. We might not even see all of the effects of it. But I think that if we just continue to remember that we're planting, some of us are on a journey of planting, some of us are watering, and some of us are seeing a harvest. Wherever we are on the journey, it matters, and what we do in the daily matters. And, you know, when we're cooking for our kids and cleaning the house and doing friggin' laundry and all this kind of stuff, it all really does matter. And I just really just want to say for every single one of you on here that I'm very grateful for all of you and that you all matter, and that the work that you do matters and your existence on this earth matters. And so thank you so much for everything that you do. It's making me feel really emotional, but I just feel very inspired by you all. And yeah, just thank you for what you do in our communities and for your families and for our children, because I know that it definitely is making an impact. So
Thank you.
yes. Okay. Well, it's time to go now. But yeah, thank you everybody, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week. Billy, thank you for connecting in from over the ocean, and I look forward to we all as a co-op and the Giragam First Nations co-op, we want to thank you so much for everything that you bring to this table, and thank you so much for your investment, and thank you for your time. We really appreciate you all so much. So love yous and yawo. Good night.